Okay, let me put it up. Okay. So here we are. Masechta Yevamos Bezras Hashem, Daf Beis, Amud Aleph. I'm just going to start off, very important, with the psukim of Yevamos. So understand what we're talking about. And once we're going to do the psukim, then we're just going to go through the pictures of the Mishnah. And I'm going to send this to you, Mayor, the pictures, what I'm going to have. So it makes it easier. And then it'll be, the whole Masechta will be very, very simple. The whole Daf today will be very, very simple. And in the future, this is why it's called visual Daf Yomi, because only seeing it on the computer, only seeing it on your screen, you have an understanding of what the Mishnah is referring to. So you don't have to describe it. You see it right there in front of you.
Right.
Yeah, this is very important. So let's just do the psukim about Yevama. The pasuk says, "Ki yeshvu achim yachtav." You have two brothers living side by side. That means they're both alive at the same time, and they're brothers, not brothers from the same father. If they're just brothers from the same mother, this doesn't apply. And the Torah says, "Umeis achan mehem," and one of the brothers dies. Uvein ein loy. He has no children. Right? So, and not only that, he has no grandchildren. Let's say he had a son that died and he has grandchild. This is not the story. He has absolutely no progenitor. He has no children, no offspring alive. So the din is that loy sia eishes hameis hachutza. The wife of the dead brother should not be allowed outside, even if it's an outside wife, even if they only did kedushin on this woman. So she's not allowed to go out and marry anybody, li'izar, a strange person. So what's the story with her? Yevama yavayalao. Yevama is her deceased husband's brother. He's called a yavam. Yavayalao. He should consummate a marriage by just having relations with her. Bia. Because with Yevama, you don't need kesef, kedushin, or shtar. Nothing else works except just having relations with his wife, with the brother-in-law. Ulakacha loy isha, and thereby he will take him as lakacha loy isha. He will take her as his wife. V'yibma, and he will uproot her from being a yavama. He's a yavam. And she is a Yavama. By consummating a marriage, she becomes not a Yavama anymore. The Yibma means she's not a Yavama anymore. She's a regular wife. Mind you, as long as if she had a child, you can't marry your brother's wife. That's one of the arayas. But here, the Torah suspends that arayas in case the brother did not have children. The other Chumash says, "V'hoya habachor asheteled." And it will happen that here, this is one of the only psukim in the Chumash that you can't read it literally. Because if you read it literally, the pasuk seems to say that the eldest boy that's born from this marriage, should be named after the deceased brother. But that's not the way we learn pshat in the Chumash. Chazal said you can't read the pasuk that way. You don't have to name the first kid that's born after the deceased brother. But what the pasuk means, v'hoya b'chor, the eldest brother should do. Here the Chumash is saying the eldest brother should do the yibim, and yokum al shem achiv ames. He should take the place of the brother that died. In other words, he takes over the Yerusha of the brother. Hi, Lewis. We just started. I'm just going through the psukim of Yevamos. But so the pasuk says that the oldest brother should do the yibim. And he should marry the brother, that's the deceased brother's wife, and he gets the Yerusha from that. He gets the inheritance of that deceased brother. So the deceased brother's name will not be erased, which means that the wife will still, the old wife who's now married to the brother. The brother that the live brother, the one that she lost her husband. Now she's married to a new brother. She takes along the inheritance that her deceased husband had from the grandfather and brings it over. And now she's walking around the property. So almost people will remember the deceased brother. Now the pasuk says, which is a basic part, and there's another three more psukim here. Very important. If a man does not want to take his yavama, he doesn't want to do that marriage. So then, also yavimta hashara, then the brother's wife should go up to the shara, means where the courthouse is, el hazakanim, to the judges, the courthouses and judges, and she complains, va'amra me'ain yavami lahakim la'achav shem b'Yisrael la'yaba yavmi. She says two things. One, that my brother-in-law does not want to perform and perpetuate the brother's name amongst the Jewish people, the deceased brother. And therefore, he does not want to perform the mitzvah of Yibam. He doesn't want to marry me. So the Koraloi Zikni Iroi, then the Zakanim of the city, means the judges have a conversation with Dibru Elam. They have a conversation with the brother, with the live brother, and tell her that why don't you marry her? What could be so bad? And they figure out that maybe it's not always good to marry your brother's wife. Why? Because if he's an old guy and she's a young girl, they're not going to have a good relationship. Or the opposite. If she's an old lady and he's a young guy, they're not going to have a good relationship. So they use their common sense to figure out, should they convince the guy to marry that lady? And v'amar, if he stands by what he said originally, I don't want to take her. In other words, not like what she's saying. She's saying that he doesn't want to perform the mitzvah of Yibam. But he's saying, I want to perform the mitzvah of Yibam, but not with her, because we're not going to have a good marriage. So the pasuk says, "V'niksha yibimta elov le'ene hazakanim." Then his brother's wife should go before him in front of the zakanim, in front of the court. And what should she do? V'cholza naloi, she removes his right shoe, me'al ragloi, from his foot, v'yarka befonav, and she spits on the ground, not in the shoe, but she spits on the ground, befonav, in front of him, in front of Bezdin. Bezdin has to see the spit. Now, why is she spitting on the ground? She's saying that you're not my husband anymore. You're not, because as long as they don't do this, he has a connection with her. Now it's almost like she's walking, he and her are going their own separate ways. So she does not have to respect him anymore. So she spits on the ground. Va'ansa va'amra. And they answer and say out loud in front of everybody. Maybe I think the Bezdin says this. This should be done to any man asher liyivne as beis achiv, who will not build his brother's house. In other words, his deceased brother's house. He decides not to marry him. So this is what should be done. So you have to say these following words. I think she has to say it also. She has to say it. The nikra shmoi b'Yisrael, and this guy should be called amongst the Jewish people by the court, Beis Chalutz Hanal, the family of the one that had his shoe removed. So they nickname him. Okay, so that's the story of the psukim, and now you got the whole psukim and this whole Masechta deals with these like 8 psukim over here. So these like 6 psukim over here. Anyway, that's the first thing I want to discuss. The second thing I want to discuss is just the Mishnah. And we'll go through the whole Mishnah right now. And then in 5 minutes, we'll go through the Mishnah, and that's it. The Mishnah is on 2 sides of the page, Beis and Beis, and goes to Beis Amid Beis. Very short dafin. Basically, it's very simple, the Mishnah, but you just have to see the picture. The picture is like this. We know that there's an araya. There is, you're not allowed to marry your brother's wife, but the Torah just gave you a heter to marry your brother's wife. When can you marry your brother's wife? If he dies without children. But let's say your brother had 2 children, 2 wives. In other words, like, up until 1,000 years ago, people had more than 1 wives. And even the Sfardim, didn't accept on themselves the Chayma Rabbeinu Gershom. They continued to have more than 1 wife. So what happens? You have 2 brothers, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven had a daughter, Rachel. Okay? He had a daughter, Rachel. Shimon, his brother, married Rachel. Shimon married his niece. That happens often, that Shimon married his niece. But he had another wife, Miriam. Okay? So now Shimon's married to the daughter of Reuven and to another wife. If Shimon dies, so now his daughter is falling to Yibam. So now Reuven can't marry his daughter, although it's his brother's deceased wife, but there's another erva on her. She's his daughter. And therefore, Reuven not only is not obligated to perform Yibam to these women, not only to his daughter, but also to the rival of Rachel, the Tzara. That's called the Miriam, the second wife, because since one wife is an erva, Miriam, the second wife, the rival, the Tzara, is also an erva. So Reuven, all these women could go free without chalitza, without yibam. Of course, there's no yibam because there's no mitzvah anymore of yibam over here. Since there's an extra arayas on one of the ladies, that's called the arayas. Now the Mishnah will say a derivative of that would also be a problem. What's a derivative of that? So look at this case. A derivative of case is called Saras Saras, a rival's rival. Again, Reuven had a daughter, Rachel, right over here, you can see in the picture. Then Shimon married his niece, Rachel, and he had a wife, Miriam. Okay, Shimon died, but there's a third brother. And the third brother, Levi, married not Rachel, the daughter of Reuven, but married the rival of Rachel, Miriam. So that means that Levi married the Tzara of Rachel. And then what happened? Levi died. So now Miriam and Esther are falling to Yibam to Reuven, right? Miriam and Esther are falling to Yibam to Reuven. Comes along the Mishnah and says, the Mishnah will say that because Miriam was in a position where she cannot do Yibam with Reuven the first time when Shimon died, because she was a rival to Rachel, she always remains an Issa Erva called Eishes Ach, which will not be alleviated by Yibam. And therefore, when she married Levi, she's always going to remain Asa to Reuven, even after Levi dies. And therefore, not only she can't fall to Yibam, but because she can't fall to Yibam, Esther can't fall to Yibam. The new rival of Miriam can't fall to Yibam. That's called the Tzarat Sarasa, and therefore that extends to the second brother. And this can extend to a third brother as well. The rival, if Esther would marry a fourth brother, and that fourth brother dies, with another wife, that Esther will not only can't fall to Yibam to Reuven, but will also exempt her rival, the new rival, from also falling to Reuven. So that's the essence of the Mishnah. So that's the whole Mishnah. One more, we'll just take another 2-3 minutes just to go through all the cases of the Mishnah and what are possible arayas that do not fall to Yibam, and there are 15 of them. And then once you see that, that's the whole Mishnah, and that's the whole story today. So the second case over here is called Bas Bitoy Bas Benoy. Simple. Reuven had a daughter or a son or a daughter, and they had a daughter. So really, Reuven has a granddaughter called Rachel. If Shimon married the granddaughter Rachel, and he had a wife Miriam, and Shimon died, so obviously Reuven cannot do Yibam on his granddaughter. So also, therefore, he's also cannot do Yibam on Miriam, the rival of his granddaughter. So there's no Yibam Achalitz in this case. That's called Bas Bito, the granddaughter from his daughter, the granddaughter from his son. That's case number 2 and case number 3. Let's go to case number 4. Is Bas Ishto. Very interesting case. Shimon was married to a woman. It doesn't matter how this happened, but Shimon was married to a woman and they had a daughter. Now, this would be similar to this first case. They had a daughter, Chana. Again, Reuven married the daughter of Leah, which is the daughter, which could be Shimon's daughter as well. Shimon married Leah. And he had a rival, Miriam, and Reuven dies. So then Shimon does not do Yibam to both Miriam and Chana, since Chana could be his daughter, and Miriam, the rival. Now, this is the same case as the first case of Bito, his daughter. So Rashi is going to point out that the first case is that Reuven had a daughter not because he was married, but because he raped somebody. So it's called anusasai. He had a daughter. So the first case deals with a case where Reuven had an offspring because he raped somebody. It's not really through marriage. And then this case, the fourth case of Bas Ishto is a regular through marriage. Shimon married Leah, normal marriage, and they had a normal daughter. That's the case over here. And here's the same thing. Case number 5 and case number 6 is Bas Beno Bas Bita, his granddaughter through a normal marriage. Again, Shimon married Leah. They had a son or a daughter, doesn't matter what, but they have a granddaughter, Nami, right? So Shimon's granddaughter, Nami, married Reuven. And Reuven had another wife, Bilhah. Reuven dies. Shimon will not do Yibam on Nami, it's his granddaughter, and also not the rival, Bilhah. So far, we did 6 cases of the Mishnah. We have to do another 9 more. Simple. Number 7 case is his mother-in-law. Your mother-in-law falls to Yibam, you don't go do Yibam. How's your mother-in-law going to fall to Yibam? Very interesting. Reuven had married 2 wives, Rachel and Leah. Fine. Then Leah had a daughter, Chana. Okay? So Shimon married basically Chana, the daughter, which is basically Reuven's granddaughter. So now Reuven dies. So Leah, the mother of Chana, which is his mother-in-law, falls to Yibam. So therefore, Leah, you can't do Yibam with your mother-in-law. You can't marry your mother-in-law, obviously. It's suicidal. So since he can't do Yibam to Leah, he also doesn't do Yibam to Rachel as well. They are exempt from everything. Next case, 9 and 8 and 9, these cases are also similar. Reuven had 2 wives, Miriam and Leah. Leah, one of them, had a granddaughter. Her son or daughter had Tzila. Okay? That's a granddaughter of one of the wives of Reuven. It doesn't necessarily have to be the daughter through Reuven. It could be through another husband. But it's a granddaughter of one of the wives of Leah. And Shimon married that lady, the granddaughter of lady. So Leah is basically his mother-in-law's mother or his father-in-law's mother. So when Reuven dies and his father-in-law's mother or his mother-in-law's mother dies, it falls to Yibam. There's no Yibam not only for Leah, but also for Miriam as well. Because again, you can't marry your mother-in-law's mother and your father-in-law's mother. Next case. Number 10, we have 5 more cases, and that's the whole Mishnah, and we'll read it inside. How is it possible your sister from your mother? So this is a little bit more intricate, but it's simple. You have this guy Moshe. He married 2 ladies, Shifra and Pua. Okay, they have 2 boys. He had from Pua Shimon. He had from Shifra Reuven. So he had each wife gave birth to 1 son, Reuven and Shimon. But Pua was previously married. You see, Pua was previously married to another husband. And they had that daughter, Chana. You get it? She had another daughter, Chana, from a previous marriage. Well, that Chana is allowed to marry Reuven because Reuven does not share a mother, because Reuven's mother is Shifra. Reuven does not share a father with Chana, so Reuven married Chana. But now, and Reuven also married Esther. Now that Reuven died, Chana is now going to fall to Yibam to Shimon. But the truth is that Shimon can't marry Chana because that's his sister, because they share a common mother called Pua. Therefore, Shimon cannot do Yibam on Chana and won't be doing Yibam on Esther too. Next case, number 11. Case number 11 is similar. Your sister from your mother. How's that? Usher is a person who married Ada and Tzila. Okay, Usher married Ada and Tzila. Tzila, one of the wives of Usher, had a sister, Rachel. Okay, now follow along. So now this Rachel married the son that Usher had with Ada. Usher had Ada, and they had a son, Gad. Gad was allowed to marry Rachel because he shares nothing with her. It's not his sister, because his mother is Ada, and it's not his father's sister because Usher is not a sister to Rachel. It's his wife's sister. So God married Rachel, and then God died. So now Moshe is now, who falls to Yibam? Rachel, his mother's sister, because Moshe was married to God, who died, which is Moshe's half brother through his father, will now fall to Yibam. Rachel falls to Yibam to Moshe, but since it's his mother's sister, therefore Rachel, you don't do Yibam, and you're not going to do Yibam on Leah, the rival of Rachel. Let's go to case number 12 and 13. Okay, this is easy. This is common, very common. Achois ishtoi. Let's say you have two brothers married two sisters. This was done a lot in the home. Reuven and Shimon. Reuven married Ada, and Shimon married Sila. And Sila and Ada are sisters. So two brothers married two sisters, but Reuven also married Chana. So now that Reuven dies, since Shimon's wife's sister's falling to Yibam, it's not going to work. So not only you don't do Yibam on Ada, you don't do Yibam on Chana as well. That's called your wife's sister. Case number 13. Case number 13 is Eishes Achev Me'imo. Eishes Achev Me'imo means the wife of your brother from your mother's side. Very simple. It's not intricate. Very easy. Yaakov had two wives, Rachel and Leah. Now Yaakov had a son from each. He had a Reuven from Leah, and he had a son from Rachel called Yosef. Now Leah had another husband. They had a son, Shimon, who died, and had a lady, Tamar. Okay? Tamar married Yosef because he's allowed to marry Yosef because they don't share a father, they don't share a mother, they don't share anything. Tamar married Yosef. Yosef had another wife, Chana, but Yosef died. Now, what's the relation between these two ladies fall to Yibam to Reuven, but Tamar cannot marry Reuven. Why not? Because they are related. Because it's the wife of his brother. It's his wife of his brother. Because I'm sorry, this was a Shimon had a wife Tamar. I'm sorry, Shimon had a wife Tamar, and then since this Tamar was at once Shimon's Reuven's half brother, this was the wife of his half brother through his mother's side. Therefore, when they fall to Yibam, he cannot have Yibam with her. Again, Leah had a son Shimon and from another husband and a son Reuven. So they're half brothers from their mother's side. And Shimon married Tamar, and then Shimon died. So really, Tamar always remained the wife of his half brother from his mother's side. Now, since remember, you don't do Yibam from your mother's side, so this always is an Isser to him to marry. So even if Tamar goes ahead and marries his brother from his father's side, it doesn't work. And then Yosef died. Since she was an Isser from his mother's side, she would not fall to Yibam. And since Tamar would not be able to do Yibam with Tamar, you can't do Yibam with Chana, the other wife of Yosef. Next. The last two are easy. Number 14 and number 15. The last two are easy. Let's say Reuven and Shimon died. Reuven and Shimon were brothers. Reuven died, fine. And Reuven was married to Esther. So now Shimon did Yibam on Esther. So Shimon married Esther, and his previous wife was Chana. Everything is good. But now Levi was born. Oh, Levi was born after Reuven died. So this Esther will always remain also to Levi, because it was at one time his brother, although he never met his brother, that remains. That means you can never do Yibam on a brother that you were not alive at the same time, because the pasuk says Ki yeshu achim yachtav. You have to be alive at the same time. Since Levi was born after Reuven died, this Esther will always remain also to Levi. So when Shimon dies, he cannot do Yibam. Since he cannot do Yibam to Esther, he cannot do Yibam to Chana, the rival of Esther. And the final case of the Mishnah, case number 15, is the daughter-in-law. How is it possible that your brother marries your daughter-in-law? Very simple. Reuven had a boy. His name was Yosef. His son Nebuch died, but he was married to Esther. And this Esther, which was his former daughter-in-law, married his brother. So Shimon married the daughter-in-law, the former daughter-in-law of his brother, Reuven. Now, and Shimon also married Chana. Shimon died. Now that Shimon died, Ruvain cannot marry his former daughter-in-law. So since Esther cannot fall to Yibam, Chana, the rival of Esther, cannot also fall to Yibam. And that's the whole case. That's the whole case in the Mishnah. One last point that the Mishnah is going to make, and that is that if the erva, the arayas, let's say, died prior to the death of the brother, and then the brother died. For example, Ruvain had a daughter, Rachel. Shimon married the daughter of Rachel, right? So Shimon married his niece. So technically, if Shimon would die now, Ruvain cannot have Yibam with Rachel. But if Shimon died, if Rachel died before Shimon died, so then Rachel's out of the picture. So when Shimon dies, the only person around was Miriam. So then Reuven is permitted to do Yibam to Miriam, since his daughter is not in the picture anymore because she died prior to Shimon dying. So if they died first, that's fine. Okay, let's do the Mishnah, and that's the whole, it'll take 2 seconds. So the Mishnah, Chamesh Esrei Nashim, there are 15 women, Poitros, not only that you can't do Yibam with them, but you can't do Yibam with their rival, Tzoraseim. Tzoraseim means a derivative of the rival. If they marry again to another brother, that means there's no chalitza, mina chalitza, umina yibim. There's no chalitza and no yibim outside for oilam. It doesn't matter how many brothers there are. If they continue to marry the tzara or the rival, it doesn't matter. There's no yibim or chalitza there. They go free. The eluhain. These are the problematic arayas that if your brother is married, if one of the brothers is married to this lady, then if one of the brothers is married to this lady, then you don't do yibim. Bitoi, if he's married to his daughter, bas bitoi, his granddaughter, bas benoi, his grandson, the daughter of his grandson, of his son, which is his granddaughter through his son, bas ishtoi, the daughter of his wife, ubas benon, the daughter of her son, ubas bitoi, the daughter of her daughter. Again, this is all the same. Bitoi is the daughter from his rape. Okay, bas ishtoi, what we said over here, is the daughter through a regular marriage. The aim chamoisoi, the mother, the chamoisoi, your mother-in-law. The aim chamoisoi, the mother of your mother-in-law. The aim chamoiv, the mother of your father-in-law. Achoisoi imoy, the sister, your sister from your mother. Achois imoy, the sister, the sister, your sister from your mother. Achois, the sister of your mother. Achois imoy is the sister of your mother. Achois ishtoi, the sister of your wife. The Eishes Achiv, the wife of your brother, Me'imai, from your mother. The Eishes Achiv Shaloi Hoyabai Lamai, the wife of your brother that was never around. The Kalosoi, and your daughter-in-law. So all these things that are married, and again, there's only 2 brothers here, Reuven and Shimon. Because if there's another brother, he can do the Yibam. We're talking about when there's only 2 brothers. So since there's nobody around to do Yibam, Harei Elu Poitris, they're not only are they not obligated or exempt from Yibam and Chalitza, but they exempt also Tzoraseim, the rival, the Tzoraseim, the rival's rival, Mina Chalitza, Mina Yibam, from Chalitza and Yibam, ad Seifa Olam, till the end of time. It doesn't matter. There's no Yibam or Chalitza. Now the Mishnah says, the Kulan, in all these cases, if the Erva, if the Arayas, if the lady that you're not supposed to marry died before the brother died, the Kulam, Imesu, if they died first, or Mianu, or they walked away from the marriage. We'll see what that means, but basically there's a possibility exists to walk away from a marriage. How is that possible? If in certain cases a Yesoima is married off, and a katana, she's a young girl, she's a katana, she would be married off by her brother or mother. They can marry her off to somebody, but it's a kedushin d'Rabbanan, which potentially she could just decide, I don't like this guy, and walk out of the marriage without a get. So something like that. So that's the case of Miyano. We'll see more about that in more detail later on. But if the Erva, Arayas, walked away from the marriage prior to the brother dying, or the brother divorced the Arayas, or it was found out that it was the whole marriage to the arayas, to the whole marriage was a mistake, because we found out that this lady could not have children. If she couldn't have children, that means the brother never really wanted to marry her. So that's called a kedushay tois, a marriage by mistake. And therefore, it uproots the whole thing. It's almost as if the marriage never occurred. Then the tzoraseya mutaris. Then the rival, the remaining wife, is permitted, and actually not just permitted, but obligated to do yibum or chalitza. Now, it's impossible to say this case that we found out that the lady couldn't have children by the case of Chamoisei, his mother-in-law, or Be'em Chamoisei, the mother of his mother-in-law, Be'em Chamib, the mother of his father-in-law, Shnimtzu Islanders, that we found out they couldn't have children, because that's impossible, because they obviously did have children. Then he's married to their daughter. Or Sheminu, or they walked away from the marriage because they're obviously adults, and a lady that's not a katana cannot walk away from a marriage without doing gerushin. So that's the case of islanders is only when we're dealing with a katan, a small girl that got married. So again, and now the Mishnah just explains everything we saw in the pictures. Kate said, how is a case of they exempt the Tzaraseyim? So I'm just going to bring up the picture again so you see what the Mishnah just said. Let's go to the top of the first case. Is you have this guy is married to Shimon's married to the daughter of Ruvain, and then Shimon dies. So then, of course, Ruachal and Miriam Ruvain cannot marry his own daughter, and so he can't do yibum to Miriam as well. What happens if Miriam, like we said, that's called Sarasayim, goes ahead and marries the third brother Levi, and Levi had another wife, Esther, and now Levi dies. Ruvain cannot do yibum, the remaining brother Ruvain cannot do yibum with Miriam, since at one time she was a rival to his daughter Rachel in a previous marriage, in another marriage to Shimon, a previous marriage to Shimon. So since Ruvain cannot do yibum to Miriam, she cannot do yibum to Esther. Now, if Esther marries a fourth brother in a case, then Esther and that brother was married to somebody else, it doesn't matter. The Esther now remains forever usher to Ruvain. That's what the Mishnah is saying. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. His daughter, or one of the arayos mentioned, was married to his brother. And she had another wife. Umeis, and he died. Since his daughter, you can't do yibum with your daughter. So your rival, you can't do yibum with. If the rival of the daughter went to a second brother, Levi, and he had another wife, Umeis, and he died, Levi died, just like the rival of his daughter, you can't do, is exempt from yibum. The rival's rival is also patura. Even if it's 100. Again, if you're familiar with derivatives trading, so this is a derivative of the original rival who was a rival to his daughter. Ketzad, what's the case? The final case in the Mishnah. Umesu tzaraseyim. Umesu, if the erva dies, tzaraseyim mutarais, the rival is permitted. What is that? If the erva died before the brother died, before the deceased, her former husband dies. Your daughter was married to your brother, right? And he had another wife. But the daughter died, or in Niskarsha, she was divorced. And then your brother died. In other words, then Shimon died. The daughter of Ruvain died first, and then Shimon died. So then then Ruvain is permitted to marry the rival of his daughter, which is Shimon's other wife, because his daughter's not falling to Yibam anymore. His daughter died. So therefore, Shimon is permitted, probably obligated to do Yibam or do Chalitza. And then the final thing that the Mishnah says, if you could have gotten out of the marriage and you did not get out of the marriage, all right, we'll see what that means. Let's say she was married to the brother and as a katana, right? She was a katana, but she's not really married because that's only a kedushin derabanan. Let's say the erva, whatever it is, was married midrabanan to the brother. Okay, the arayas. And then what happened? What happened? She didn't do mian. She didn't walk away from the marriage. She still remains married, albeit rabbanan wise, to the brother. And then that brother dies. So the Mishnah says, really, we could almost look as you're not married to Arayas because it's only a kedushin the rabbanan. So therefore, sarasa chayletzes v'layisbanis. You could only for the rival do chalitza and not do yibam, because technically you should be able to do yibam because it's almost as if the brother is not married to the arayas. But since it's kedushin the rabbanan, we say that you should only do chalitza and not yibam. So that ends the Mishnah. We'll discuss everything that the Mishnah said. But one thing you have to ask yourself, and we'll leave you with this question. The question is that the Torah gives you a mitzvah that you marry your dead brother's wife. So why wouldn't you say that since there's a mitzvah asay to marry a dead brother's wife, who cares if it's your daughter or all the arayas that this wife is? Who cares if it's any of the arayas? Why did you say the mitzvahs asay, the commandment to marry your dead brother's wife, should override any loisese, a prohibition of not marrying the daughter or not marrying the arayas? And so that's the Gemara going to deal. The whole Gemara is going to put itself in a shmiz of essay doicha loisese of the next few blocks. It's a very interesting sugya of why don't you say that? Okay, so that's where we'll stop, Bezos Hashem.
Baruch, let me ask you a question. Is there a time, by the way, all the examples that you gave are not complicated at all. You have to follow them, you have to pay close attention, and they're pretty simple, in fact. But and some of them are very common, like number 12, two brothers marrying two sisters. That happens. Right. That's nothing unusual about that. Right. But someone, let's say, party A is supposed to marry party B, let's say, irrespective of the situation. And party B is a very young, for example. Is there a time requirement to fulfill Yibum, or can you wait a year, 2 years, 3 years?
No. So if they're, let's say, a katana under, that means the whole original marriage was drabanan. So you don't, so there's no mitzvah of Yibum because midaraisi is not even married. The reason why they allowed let's say a man died and he left over a young girl, a 7-year-old girl. The reason why they allowed the mother to marry the girl off to some other guy, even though she really, Torah, only a dad can do that, not a mother. The reason why they allowed that, because the mother, how is she going to raise this girl? She has no support, and there was a chance that this girl is going to end up on the street as a zayna. Right. So they allowed her midrabanan to marry her off to a man, but it's only kedusha rabbanan. And what they said was that if she decides, let's say she turns 10, 11, she says, I don't like this guy, she can walk out of the marriage and say, I am refusing to stay with him, and there's no get involved. It's like a midrabanan type of marriage.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot about that in Masechta as well.
Yeah, very interesting, fascinating.
It's this type of Mishnah that the Gemara, this is what Gemara is all about. They throw you in the middle of the deep water and they ask you to swim. And if you never swam in your life, it's very difficult. This is the most uncommon case. There was a Rav Bick who lived in the Bronx and then in Borough Park. He did chalitzas, if I remember when I was younger. Very rare you could have the chalitza situation. It's not so common. And this is the first thing that you're learning about Nashim. Yeah. That's the complicated cases. Okay.
Fascinating.
Yeah, very good. I'll send a copy of this diagram so you have it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Toda rabba.
Okay. Sei gesund, everybody. Gute Nacht.
Gute Nacht, Baruch. Thank you.